In this episode, we will talk about Indian Medical Association's petition against Patanjali's advertisements. We will also talk about BJP's response to Congress's remarks on PM Modi and Hema Malini. But first, we will talk about the island of Katchatheevu. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Katchatheevu is a small barren island located 33 kilometers off the Indian coast, lying within the maritime boundary of Sri Lanka. This island has been in the spotlight for the past few days after a right to information request was filed by the Tamil Nadu Bharatiya Janata Party President K. Annamalai regarding Katchatheevu. Since then, the party has been asserting that the Congress government in 1974 handed over an important part of India to Sri Lanka by giving away this island. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressed the matter during his rally in Meerut, discussing the capture of Tamil Nadu fishermen and the seizure of their boats by Sri Lankan forces.
श्रीलंका और तमिलनाडु के बीच में समुद्र में एक टापू है, एक द्वीप है, कच्चाथीवू, अलग अलग नाम भी लोग बोलते हैं, कच्चाथीवू। ये द्वीप सुरक्षा की दृष्टि से बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। देश आजाद हुआ तब हमारे पास था और ये हमारे भारत का अभिन्न अंग रहा है। लेकिन कांग्रेस ने 4-5 दशक पहले कह दिया कि ये द्वीप तो गैर जरूरी है, फालतू है, यहां तो कुछ होता ही नहीं है। और ये कहते हुए मां भारती का एक अंग आजाद भारत में ये कांग्रेस के लोगों ने, इंडियन अलायंस के साथियों ने मां भारती का एक अंग काट दिया और भारत से अलग कर दिया।
In this segment, we will speak to Indian Express's Diplomatic Affairs editor Shubhajit Roy about this controversy, the significance of this island, and how Sri Lanka managed to claim it. Shubhajit, for our listeners who might not know, can you start by telling us where exactly the Katchatheevu Island is located and what do we know about its origins?
So, this Katchatheevu Island is a very small island, which basically it's a 285-acre patch in the sea within the maritime boundary line of Sri Lanka. And it's located about 33 kilometers off the Indian coast, away from Rameswaram in Tamil Nadu. Now, this tiny barren island was apparently created following a 14th century volcanic eruption. And this island is about 1.6 kilometers in length and just 300 meters wide at its widest point. So you can imagine it's really a small kind of island in the maritime waters. Now, what happened was the island was under the control of the kingdom of Ramnath Raja, a zamindari from 1795 to 1803 during the British rule. So now, India and Sri Lanka have been claiming Katchatheevu since at least 1920s. 1921, if I remember correctly, is the year when they started, after a survey placed the island within Sri Lanka's boundaries. Now, this was contested by the British Indian delegation that cited the Ramnath Kingdom's ownership of the island. The dispute could not be settled and continued in the years even after 1947, when India gained independence. In 1974, when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, the two governments signed on June 26th in Colombo and in June 28th in New Delhi an agreement by which the island went to Sri Lanka. But the Indian fishermen were given access to Katchatheevu for rest, for drying of nets, and for the annual St. Anthony's festival.
Right, and we understand that the agreement did not specify the fishing rights of Indian fishermen. But Shubhajit, it's now been nearly 50 years since that agreement. So how did this come up now?
So just ahead of the elections in Tamil Nadu, now, this issue has resurfaced where the Tamil Nadu BJP chief K. Annamalai, who accessed information from the government, again ruled by the BJP, of course, under the RTI Act, where he sort of made the point, those disclosures, revelations make the point that how the Indian government gave it away. That is how the Prime Minister also framed it, and how the ruling DMK at that point of time also had signed off to that particular agreement. So, in a sense, it has revived the debate on Katchatheevu Island, whether India gave it away, knowingly and willingly. So that's the whole backstory behind this particular controversy right now.
And has the BJP spoken about this issue in the past as well?
Well, the BJP, when it's been in government throughout, has abided by the decision that was taken in 1974. And that is that the Katchatheevu Island is part of Sri Lanka. And it is in Sri Lankan waters, and that's it. So the BJP, when in power, it has always maintained, abided by the government's decision of the day back in the day, which was taken by the Congress government in 1974. But their political parties have often on raised this issue. As I said, DMK, ADMK, especially these two parties, also the smaller region parties of Tamil Nadu, say MDMK and others, have also raised this issue of Katchatheevu. But people in the government, once they've been in the government, they've never flagged this issue as taking it back from Sri Lankan position or Sri Lankan as per the deviating or departing from the agreement. So that's been the stance from BJP.
And what is the reason that this has come up now?
Yeah, obviously it's a political issue, and what has happened is that it seems that Tamil Nadu goes to polls in the first phase itself. So the BJP is trying to make inroads in the South Indian state where BJP doesn't have much of a presence. So it is using this issue as an opportunity to embarrass the ruling government in Tamil Nadu, which is led by the DMK, saying that, they had signed off, and Congress and DMK, which are in the opposition at the center, also they have signed off and given away the island to Sri Lanka. So I think that's the framing in which, this particular issue has come up after so many years.
And Shubhajit, has Sri Lanka made any comments on this issue?
They have made, so the foreign minister has said now that Ali Sabri, who was the Sri Lankan foreign minister, he has said that the issue was settled 50 years ago, and that Indian political parties are having an internal debate in themselves, and that there has been no communication so far from the Indian government in this regard.
Also, you had the opportunity to talk to Austin Fernando, the former Sri Lankan envoy to India. What were his views on this issue, and what were some of the highlights of your chat with him?
Yeah, so Austin Fernando, who was Sri Lankan High Commissioner to India between 2018 and 2020, I spoke to him on Wednesday, and he is a very senior and experienced veteran official from the Sri Lankan side. He's been secretary to the president of Sri Lanka, has been advisor to the prime minister of Sri Lanka. He's been a governor of the eastern province where there are Tamil minorities as well. And also he's been home secretary and defense secretary of the Sri Lankan government. So he essentially said that, this seems like a vote catcher or a vote puller for the BJP. But he said that it becomes a problem once the government of the day, once the party which is going to win the elections, likely to win the elections, they make such an issue. It would be difficult for the Indian government to step back after the elections, which is a problem, he said. He also said that if the Indian government crosses the Sri Lankan maritime international boundary line, it would be seen as a violation of Sri Lankan sovereignty. And he recalled in this context Sri Lankan President Ranasinghe Premadasa's statements on the IPKF, the Indian peacekeeping force in the late 80s, where he had talked about violation of Sri Lankan sovereignty. In fact, he made a very provocative question also, that if Pakistan proposes such sea encroachment near Goa, will India tolerate it? Or if Bangladesh does something like this in the Bay of Bengal, what will be India's response? So these are very strong words coming from a very experienced official diplomat from the Sri Lankan side.
And the 1970s agreement regarding Katchatheevu that we've been talking about also dealt with the Vajay Bank in the area. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so Vajay Bank is again used to be in the Sri Lankan and Indian maritime sort of border territory. And it's located south of Kanyakumari, and it's a resource-rich submarine plateau. Now, the India-Sri Lanka Agreement of 1976 recognized the Vajay Bank as part of India's exclusive economic zone, granting India sovereign rights over the area and its resources. Under the agreement signed on March 23rd, 1976, the Sri Lankan fishing vehicles and personnel were not allowed to engage in fishing activities in the Vajay Bank. However, as a gesture of goodwill, India permitted a limited number of Sri Lankan fishing vehicles licensed by India to fish in the area for a period of 3 years from the establishment of India's exclusive economic zone. So after this period, Sri Lankan vessels ceased to fish in the Vajay Bank. So this agreement is generally viewed as favorable for India as it secured sovereign rights to a significant maritime area rich in biodiversity and considered one of India's richest fishery sources. In fact, former Indian and Sri Lankan diplomats had told me that governments in place in the 1970s had concluded the agreement of Katchatheevu in good faith, where both sides had won some and lost some. In fact, Indian diplomats who have dealt with Sri Lanka in the past have also underlined that Delhi, India was able to get access to Vajay Bank and its rich resources, in a sense, almost as a quid pro quo of sorts, where Katchatheevu went to Sri Lanka while Vajay Bank and its rich resources came to India. So from that perspective, it's an important and significant set of agreements which both governments have followed and abided by.
And Shubhajit, now with the ruling government bringing this up ahead of the elections, how do we see this issue going from here?
So I think we'll have to see how the Indian government it takes this particular issue forward after the elections and once the government is in place. And that would sort of determine the course of the debate after this.
Next, we talk about a case against Patanjali. Back in August 2022, the Indian Medical Association had filed a petition in the Supreme Court against Patanjali after it published an advertisement that said, quote, "Save yourself and the country from the misconceptions spread by the pharma and the medical industry," unquote. The association claimed that Patanjali's attack against modern medicine are coupled with Patanjali's own false and baseless claims about curing certain diseases using Patanjali's products. Now, the court had taken a strong stance against the company, and in November of last year, it even instructed Patanjali to stop misleading advertisements against the modern system of medicine. However, the very next day, Ramdev and the company's managing director, Acharya Balkrishna, had a press conference in which they claimed that Patanjali had permanent cures for glaucoma, blood pressure, arthritis, asthma, and diabetes. Since then, both Ramdev and Balakrishna have offered an apology, but the court this week refused to accept it. To know more about the case and its latest developments, Indian Express's Apurva Vishwanath, who writes on law for the paper, joins us. Apurva, can you begin by sharing with us what exactly has Patanjali been accused of?
So this is a case where the Indian Medical Association, which is a group of doctors who went to the Supreme Court saying that Patanjali had been issuing misleading advertisements and also making disparaging statements on allopathy or science-backed medicine. Their concern was essentially that it is a continuous, systematic and unabated spread of misinformation, especially during the COVID pandemic. So Indian Medical Association's plea is pretty much that Patanjali should be stopped from making these advertisements and there is no check on these advertisements. So it's essentially a writ petition that is filed before the Supreme Court. And the court has been hearing this case since early 2022. It's gone before different benches. First started with the Chief Justice's bench when Justice N.V. Ramana was the Chief Justice. So after that, it's moved to other benches and other courts. Finally, a bench headed by Justice Hema heard this case and said Patanjali should be stopped from making these statements and also pulled up the government of India on its role in regulating false advertisement.
Now, the allegations are that Patanjali's advertisements violated the Drug and Magic Remedies Objectionable Advertisements Act. Can you talk about the act and in what way the petitioners claim Patanjali has violated it?
See, for example, one of the advertisements which the IMA flagged to the Supreme Court, and this is something that was also discussed in court during the course of the case. So in July 2022, Patanjali had a half-page advertisement titled Misconceptions Spread by Allopathy, and it said, quote, "Save yourself and the country from the misconceptions spread by pharma and medical industry," unquote. So these are the kind of advertisements that the petitioners are flagging to the court. And this is where the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act comes into place. This is a 1954 legislation. Essentially, this law seeks to control the advertisement of drugs and prohibit the advertisement, which basically say that this drug possesses magic qualities and it can cure anything and everything. So to provide a standard of regulation for advertisements when it comes to drugs. That's why the phrase magic remedies in the act. There are no magic remedies. So the drug has to specifically state what it can do, what it cannot do, what are the risk factors. So pharma advertising is fairly regulated. So which is why even when you see ads on TV by major pharma companies, they come with caveats and they also come with these lines which say these have to be prescribed by a doctor. There are some drugs which cannot be brought over the counter and advertisements have to say that specifically. So in the case of Patanjali, during COVID, it was being advertised as if it is a cure in itself. In fact, the Delhi High Court also heard a case where the issue was essentially that Baba Ramdev had made statements that Joe Biden got COVID despite taking allopathic medicines and ergo allopathic medicines don't work for COVID, right? In fact, the Delhi High Court at that time had orally remarked that this could even end up being a diplomatic incident and, the yoga guru should not be making such statements. So the Supreme Court's hearing is centered around this false advertisement.
And Apurva, can you also talk about what other laws stop companies from making fraudulent claims?
Of course, there is the Advertising Standards Council of India, which will have to evaluate all these ads and, issue directions. That is an industry body, which is basically self-regulation, right? Apart from that, the government would intervene if there are situations like these. And that is, in fact, what the court is now questioning. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta appeared for the union. And the court was asking what the government did when all of this false advertising was happening by Patanjali. So here, the court was not pleased that the government hasn't done anything about this. It, in a sense, points to inaction and a tacit permission by the government for Patanjali to do what they did. And now that in the next hearing will have to be heard again because the union has now filed an affidavit before the court on what this is supposed to be. In fact, there is a government committee's report which clearly stated that at best, Patanjali's prescription for COVID can be a addition to the existing treatment plan that is medically, scientifically advocated, that it in itself cannot be prescribed. So the court was asking this question that when the government's own committee is saying that at best Patanjali can only be an addition, why was the government allowing advertisement like this?
So what orders has the court so far given to Patanjali?
So first, a bench headed by Justice Ahsanuddin Amanullah had said that this disparaging false advertisement had to stop. So which meant Patanjali had to essentially take off their billboards and, other signs that they had put up, especially where they call allopathy, quote unquote, a stupid and bankrupt science. So there have been a lot of these statements where Patanjali is essentially saying that allopathy doesn't work or, people should not be taking allopathic medicine, even on things like diabetes and other serious illnesses. So the court said you have to stop this, and the court also contemplated imposing a penalty of almost 1 crore. At this point, Patanjali's lawyer said the advertisements will be taken down. They came back and said that they have been taken down, but it was found that that wasn't the case and it was still continuing, which is why the court this time has made some serious observations, which include asking why Patanjali can't be hauled up for perjury. So what the court did was it said that personal appearance by Baba Ramdev and Balakrishna, who heads Patanjali, would be needed in court. So both of them were present in the Supreme Court, basically giving an undertaking to the court that this kind of advertisement will stop.
Right. And after this, what did Patanjali do in response?
So Patanjali's managing director, Balakrishna, has issued an unqualified apology to the Supreme Court. that they will take down the misleading advertisements. But of course, this has come after the Supreme Court pointed out that its orders were still being violated. So the court did say that this apology is mere lip service if you haven't done the action, which is taking down those advertisements. So in an affidavit, they did express regret and said it was only meant to contain general statements, but inadvertently included these disparaging remarks and other misleading advertisement. So now in the next hearing, the court will have to see how this case of contempt will be taken forward.
And Apurva, have there been similar cases like this in the recent past as well?
False advertisement and disparaging remarks are a very common litigation, but not of this scale and not of this significance. There are cases involving small companies, big companies, before high courts across the country, especially where ASCI, which is the Advertising Standards Council of India, would have issued an order asking a particular ad to be taken down, for example. So the party would then come to court and this would be litigated. But with a pharma company and with such grave consequences for what they are advertising, this is sort of unprecedented.
And in the end, we talk about the latest war of words between Congress and the BJP. Yesterday, the BJP slammed the Congress party over its leader's latest remarks against Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Hema Malini, saying that they have lost their mental balance and that the people of the country will respond fittingly in the Lok Sabha elections. The BJP's reaction came after senior Congress leader Charan Das Mahant, while addressing a rally in Chhattisgarh on Tuesday, called for supporting the former Chief Minister Bhupesh Baghel and said, quote, "We want someone who can hold a stick and confront Narendra Modi," unquote. And then the next day, BJP IT department head Amit Malviya shared an undated video on X accusing Haryana Congress leader Randeep Surjewala of making sexist remarks against BJP MP and candidate from the Mathura seat, Hema Malini. In the video posted by Malviya, Surjewala was seen making sexist remarks about the actor politician while attacking the ruling BJP.
एमएलए एमपी क्यों बनाते हैं? ताकि वो हमारी आवाज उठा सके, हमारी बात मनवाए, इसीलिए बनाते होंगे. कोई हेमा मालिनी तो है नहीं जो चाटने के लिए बनाते हो.
Talking about these remarks, the BJP national spokesperson Sudhanshu Trivedi stated that the opposition party has reached a new low in showing disrespect towards women. He further added that Hema Malini would be Sonia Gandhi's age and questioned whether Surjewala's comments against her were appropriate. This latest controversy comes with the Lok Sabha elections just around the corner, scheduled to take place in 7 phases between 19th of April and 1st of June. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank, Bhargava and me, Niharika, Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.